All right, we are being joined now by criminal defense attorney Dayne Phillips, and we're talking about the status conference set for Monday in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. It's going to be heard before Judge Deborah McCaslin in Lexington. Dayne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about a status conference. To our viewers, what is a status conference in this case?
So Deborah McCaslin, the judge, has been assigned to basically oversee this case, not only preside over the actual trial, but the scheduling part. There are a lot of moving parts to this case. You have legal motions, you have the scheduling of not only the different hearings that lead up to the trial, but also all the witness issues. So basically it's, let's deal with the initial set of motions, which the defense filed some recent motions that we'll discuss, I'm sure, in a second, but mainly they'll probably address those three motions and have a plan for scheduling, trying to address several things. I believe there also was another news article that maybe came out that one of the law enforcement officers had some recent termination, so that turns into maybe needing additional time to investigate. The defense needs to run down some maybe additional leads as far as that's concerned. So really it's getting the process started.
Speaking of getting the process started, will we get a date, an approximate date for when this trial will take place?
Very approximate, loose, probably looking at timelines of phases to get there. Will they actually set a definitive date? I doubt it, but if they do, it would be very tentative. I wouldn't set that in stone in any way, shape, or form.
I know the State Attorney General's office, when they found out he was going to get a new trial, they were pushing to retry this by the end of the year, but Defense Attorney Dick Harpootlian telling me that's not going to happen. He is saying more like spring or maybe even summer of next year.
As soon as that was said in the press conference, I understand we had the election coming up, the primaries. There's no way logistically, there's too many factors going into that, and the amount of ability while he's preparing for the actual election in November, I just don't see that. I believe this will be something that'll be placed at the foot of the new Attorney General that's coming into the office. However, they still have most of the team that tried that case within that office. So not much changes. I believe Alan Wilson maybe only handled one specific witness in that case. So the team is there, head by Creighton Waters. And so unlikely. I would not put any money on the fact that this case gets tried in 2026.
All right, let's dive into the motions that have been filed by the defense attorneys in this case. A change of venue. That's one of their first motions here. They want it removed from the 14th Judicial Circuit, saying they can't get a fair trial anywhere near that area in South Carolina.
Generally, I would say that the motion would be denied. Even the Boston Bomber didn't get a change of venue. However, I do feel in this case there's going to be a change of venue. I think Judge McCaslin's going to grant that motion. The big answer is under the South Carolina law, generally with a change of venue, it changes to another county that's within the same judicial circuit. So their motion specifically says we're not going to be able to get a fair trial in any of these counties in the Low Country that's in that judicial circuit, that it's not going to cure the prejudice. We need an outside judicial circuit, which makes me also think in saving time, money, and resources that we may see Murdaugh's trial here in the Midlands. That's a gut feeling. It doesn't have to be, but if that motion gets granted and Judge McCaslin's here locally,
right,
I could see that, especially with the status conference being in Lexington on Monday. It might be a foreshadowing what we're going to see in the future.
Again, the judge is based in Lexington County. Yes. Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin, they operate here in the Midlands along with the State Attorney General's office. So, yeah, it would make a lot of sense, I guess, on cost-wise, to keep the trial in the Lexington, Richland County area. I'd even heard some legal experts say they wouldn't be surprised if Saluda or Fairfield County are in the mix.
The issues I have with when that came up is Saluda's a very old courthouse. I just think size-wise, technology-wise, unlikely. Parking, the media storm, I just don't believe. I think Lexington or Richland would be able to safely and handle all the situation, the media circus that comes with this, and all the, it's international in terms of the amount of publication press, and so the amount of people that's going to come to try to be a part of the second retrial, I just see it's going to be a bigger courtroom. And Lexington County courtroom, the main one is big enough to encompass that. It's same for Richland.
One of the other motions filed is they want to do more DNA testing on DNA that was collected at the crime scene. Specifically, they're talking about DNA that was collected under the fingernails of Maggie Murdaugh. SLED determined that DNA did not belong to Alex Murdaugh. They said it was an unknown male. How big of a deal is that?
It's interesting. And one more caveat to that motion is independent lab testing. They do not want SLED conducting that testing. They want this DNA sample to be sent to an independent lab to be tested. Depending what the results are, that could change a whole significant issue in terms of the direction of the defense. They may have a individual that they would maybe start pointing at. There's a much higher threshold to third-party guilt. Defense lawyers aren't able just to throw the defense that saying that this other person did it lightly. The law requires a higher threshold to get to that point. But if they have that DNA there and somehow they have some other additional evidence, it could be a third-party guilt defense case. So it could have a major significance to the case. At this point, it's pure conjecture, but the whole point is they want an independent lab to conduct this analysis and see where it goes. They're doing all the due diligence as far as the investigation, which, to provide effective assistance of counsel, they're required to do.
So defense attorneys throughout the main trial and afterwards keep saying no DNA evidence was collected that linked Alex Murdaugh to the murders. There was no blood splatter on his clothes, nothing in his car, nothing that would directly tie him DNA-wise to the crimes that were committed. So again, when you're talking about collecting DNA evidence underneath Maggie Murdaugh's fingernails and doing additional DNA testing, as you mentioned, they could be gearing up some sort of defense to point the finger at an unknown person involved in this case.
And they can't do that. I mean, they can bring up the fact that there was unknown DNA and that they can have that as far as was there further investigation done. But the reason they want the independent testing is if they can get a match, then that turns into the next layer of investigation, which could ultimately lead to a third-party guilt defense where you get to point the finger at another person. You can't automatically do that in a case without more. The big issue that you brought up that kind of went away in the first trial, it was massive in terms of the effect in the pretrial part, was that on his shirt there was an expert witness that I believe the state had that had said that there was blood splatter on Alex Murdaugh's shirt. Turned out it wasn't human blood, and there was Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin and the team went to great lengths to basically show that this expert had provided some real faulty reports. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, which as a defense attorney I was watching very closely, and that once that kind of went away and the state certainly wasn't going to use faulty evidence once they kind of got caught on that, it was interesting. From the trial strategy, does the defense decide to really bring that in? Because it didn't really come out before the jury, I think, at all, and I may have missed it during the first trial, but I always thought that was such an interesting thing that for a while the state had an expert that I believe was ready to say that there was blood splatter on Alex Murdaugh. Then turned out the report showed it wasn't human blood, and there were a lot of other faulty things. I won't go too deep in the weeds with it, but there was a lot of interesting things going back and forth related to his shirt and a prior expert that the state had retained. And
this unknown DNA, how would that square up in court when you've got the dog kennel video? Basically, you hear Alex Murdaugh at the scene. He later admitted he lied. Oh, what a tangle web we weave, I think he said. He admitted he lied that he was there at the dog kennels that evening. How would that square up with this unknown DNA under Maggie Murdaugh's fingernails?
That's his biggest hurdle. Once he testified and had to address the fact, well, and again, from the Snapchat video placing him at the scene, that changes the nature. And I believe the jurors that got interviewed or post-trial all said that that's the linchpin of the case. That's the turning point, right? The tipping point was once there was a Snapchat video showing that based on his prior statements, he had not been truthful about being at the scene prior. Now I believe the defense's position now is that that timeline that the state has presented, that it's moments prior, 8 minutes, 30, within 20 minutes, I believe the defense is going to challenge that timeline significantly and try to show that there are a lot of issues which cause or time of death. I know that based on some press conferences that what was presented, that the time of death is, from the defense's standpoint, completely unreliable, and that although he was at the kennels at that time, the time of death might have happened much later, not as close in proximity of time, and that may be, I think, where the defense is going with the retrial, and that will be a focal point, because that is the turning point of the case. Once he's told law enforcement that he's not down by the kennels, and then there he is, we have documentary evidence of his voice, and then him having to admit that he had lied about that is, I think, probably the central issue that will be focused on from the defense in the second trial.
If I remember correctly, it was almost dark in that video, so that may play a role as well.
If I remember correctly, the state, their timeline was, 8, 10, 15 minutes. It was a very short window of when they believe that Snapchat video occurred to when the murders occurred. And I think their argument was they took the Snapchat video and they took when the cell phones for Maggie and Paul basically stopped communicating, and then that was how they tried to create a timeline.
Talk about trial preparation. Another motion that was filed is giving Alex Murdaugh access to case materials on a secure laptop computer while he is serving his prison sentence in the state corrections system. So again, how likely is it that he would have access to this on a secure computer?
I think it's likely, given the voluminous amount, it's such a significant amount of evidence that he'll have, and it cuts down with the lawyers having to go back and forth and them having, I believe as they noted in the motion, numerous bankers' boxes worth of evidence. This makes it easy. You have a password encrypted hard drive. That way there's nobody else that can access it. You won't have to worry about any of those issues. Bankers' boxes easily could be, items could be taken, altered, copied, you name it. This is the safest way. It's the most efficient way. I believe that motion will be granted. I worked on a murder trial years ago where I was standby counsel. The individual was representing himself, and he was in the county jail, and this same type of motion was granted because he was preparing his case and he needed to have access to all those files, and it wasn't realistic to, again, have bankers' boxes worth of documents just sitting at the jail.
Bottom line here, with these 3 motions that are filed, you think all 3 perhaps will be granted?
I do. I think there's a good likelihood that all 3 are granted. I believe the change of venue is appropriate. Again, under the law, it should stay within the judicial circuit, but if you're going to grant it, I believe the argument that you couldn't cure the prejudice, and it just makes sense to me to take it out of that, to take us far away from where the Murdaugh family had a stronghold for a century essentially, and generations, and take it out of the Low Country where you had such a stranglehold from that family in that area, not only from everyone that they know, but also being the lead prosecutors in that area. And he was a special prosecutor in that same judicial circuit. So you have all those connections. It just makes it easier. And I, again, not to be selfish, but it would be great to see the trial here in the Midlands, what would come of that. And I do believe both courthouses and all the parties are here. It just, to me, makes sense, again, saving time, money, and resources to have the court case moved to either Lexington or Richland.
And again, is it possible at this status conference hearing on Monday morning in front of Judge McCaslin that we could get 1 or all 3 of these motions approved?
It's possible. Now, whether she actually rules on them during that hearing, she may take them under advisement. I think that's possible. Instead of ruling right on the moment, taking under advisement, she's just going to take some time to make sure she does her and her law clerk does all the research before she makes a decision. And nobody wants to make a snap judgment decision, especially in probably the most high-profile case in the world right now. And so they may all be under advisement for a while before she makes a decision.
All right, criminal defense attorney Dayne Phillips, thank you so much for your expertise on all of this, and we're going to just wait and see what happens Monday and in the days and weeks ahead as this case makes its way back to the court system, the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. Hopefully we'll get a date on a trial soon, and of course we're going to keep you posted all along the way as new developments in this case come up, both on air and online at WLTX.com.